It has just occurred in Washington that something of monumental proportions, but nearly no one is talking about it. A new financial reform law has been quietly approved by Congress, and buried deep within its 2,000 pages is a clause that has the potential to completely transform the structure of the banking sector in the United States. It is a mandate that basically forces every major bank in the United States to adopt a blockchain-based system for cross-border settlements. This compulsion is hidden in the fine print in terminology that the majority of people would overlook. In addition, my sources have informed me that there is just one blockchain that is suitable for this purpose. This is Ripple's XRP ledger. There is no such thing as a rumor or supposition. This is known as the law. At first glance, this measure appears to be just another thick piece of law pertaining to financial modernization. It is the kind of legislation that comes and goes without much attention from the general public. If you read the actual language, however, you will find that the consequences are startling. A need for real-time gross settlement systems that make use of interoperable distributed ledger technology is included in the law, and it can be found on page 1247, section 4 billions. That one statement is the most important part. Additionally, it indicates that Congress itself has issued an order for the United States financial system to modernize its infrastructure to something that is capable of processing international payments quickly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without relying on the antiquated SWIFT network. Here is where things start to get crazy. There is only one technology that currently exists that satisfies all of those requirements. It is a system that is capable of handling millions of transactions per second, is interoperable with the existing banking infrastructure, is compliant with ISO 2022, is environmentally efficient, and has been demonstrated to be effective in real-world cross-border deals. The XRP ledger is the name of that system. This is not merely my viewpoint, rather, it is a real-world technical fact. Within its own regulations, the United States government has just characterized Ripple's technology in a manner that is practically word for word. If you find that to be inconceivable, allow me to explain it to you. Specifically, the paper makes reference to interoperable systems that are capable of settling digital asset-based transfers in real time. No other blockchain currently in existence possesses both the legislative clarity and the functionality that has been demonstrated to be capable of doing this at scale. Bitcoin is painfully sluggish. The cost of Ethereum is prohibitive. The star is not large enough. There is no other cryptocurrency that possesses the infrastructure, alliances, and compliance capabilities necessary to interact directly with large financial institutions, except XRP. This is the reason why Ripple has been holding confidential discussions with the Federal Reserve, the International Monetary Fund, and central banks all around the world for a number of years. Each and every one of those gatherings was bringing us to this point. Now, let's take a look at the timeline. The Ripple versus SEC case was finally resolved, which put an end to the legal uncertainty surrounding the definition of XRP as a non-security. Could it be a coincidence that this bill in Congress moves forward within a few months? None of the above. All of this is a part of the new financial systems rollout, which is being quite carefully controlled. It is constructed on blockchain rails, with XRP serving as the central component. A shift to digital currency is taking place for the United States dollar, and the XRP ledger will serve as the foundation of this change. When it comes to banks, what does this imply? Under the terms of this new rule, all of the major financial institutions, including JP Morgan and Bank of America, as well as Wells Fargo and Citigroup, will be obliged to demonstrate that they are able to use blockchain technology to facilitate international settlements. This indicates that they are no longer able to rely primarily on both SWIFT and traditional systems for them to be successful. They need to implement a system that provides instant, verified, and low-cost international transactions. Ripple's ODL network, which is powered by XRP, is the only technology that is currently capable of doing so on a large scale that is now available. To put it another way, this is not a recommendation. Not only are banks being urged to consider adopting blockchain technology, but they are also being instructed to do so. This is a requirement for compliance. In light of this, it can be concluded that the demand for XRP will no longer be driven by hype. There is going to be a requirement imposed by the law. Imagine for a moment that the whole banking sector in the United States was suddenly compelled to acquire XRP for the purpose of liquidity operations. This translates to the transfer of billions of dollars worth of cash into a digital asset that has a predetermined quantity of 100 billion coins. The vast majority of them are already incarcerated or in the custody of an institution. What is the end result? The supply shock that was generated by the government was unlike anything we have ever seen before. Have a conversation about what comes after this. Immediately following the implementation of this law, all of the major financial institutions will be required to create liquidity pools on the XRP ledger. In other words, you should purchase and keep XRP. Instead of speculating, we will be operating each and every international transfer, cross-border remittance, and treasury settlement that is processed through these new systems will necessitate the utilization of XRP as the bridge asset. This means that the amount of XRP that is required for liquidity will increase exponentially over time as volumes continue to scale. In order to settle value, a greater quantity of XRP is required the more the system is utilized. And keep in mind that XRP is a deflationary asset. The overall supply is permanently reduced as a result of each transaction, which results in the burning of a little quantity. Implications for the market are really astonishing. At the current levels of liquidity, it is theoretically impossible for the global banking sector to come on board with XRP without causing a price revaluation to occur. The price of XRP could skyrocket to $500 per coin virtually overnight if only 1% of the cross-border reserves held by U.S. banks were invested in the cryptocurrency. This is the conclusion reached by even the most conservative forecasts. It is not guesswork, rather, it is mathematical reasoning. It is simply not possible for the available supply to satisfy that level of institutional demand without the price increased in order to bring the market back into equilibrium. However, this is the bit that the media will not tell you. Their intention is to keep this information a secret. Wall Street is aware of what is anticipated. There is already a growing number of insiders. While the general public is debating the laws that should be placed on cryptocurrencies, the actual transformation is taking place behind closed doors through closed-door agreements, pilot programs, and confidential technology collaborations. The language of the bill was intended to be sufficiently ambiguous so that only individuals who are well-versed in the subject would understand what it actually implies. Meanwhile, retail investors continue to be distracted by the daily price swings and the noise that comes from influencers. Once again, we are presented with the same playbook that we have seen before the internet boom. Many at the top of the technology industry were aware of where the next trillion-dollar opportunities were going to be. The major financial institutions had already begun to amass assets prior to the expansion of the property market, and now, in this age of digital value transfer, it is the turn of XRP, while the rest of the world is sleeping. Those who are at the top of their game are discreetly positioning themselves. Therefore, what happens when this information is made public? The moment mainstream media catches on and begins reporting that Congress has effectively legalized and mandated blockchain settlement for banks, the floodgates open, retail investors rush in, institutions that waited on the sidelines scramble to comply, and every new buyer faces the same math of fixed supply and soaring demand. That's how parabolic moves are born. Let's get one thing straight, though. This is not financial advice, rather, it is the reality of the financial situation. Everything, including the documentation, the figures, and the timing, is in perfect alignment. The United States Congress did more than just pass a modernization measure. They also laid the groundwork for the largest asset migration in the history of the financial sector, and regardless of whether or not they are aware of it, they have just established XRP as the standard that will successfully bridge the gap between the traditional world of fiat banking and the emerging digital economy. Let's take a more in-depth look at the pattern that we're seeing here. Blockchain technology company Ripple is forming partnerships with central banks in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. While this is going on, the United States government is discreetly working to clarify the distinction between digital assets and securities. There is also the International Monetary Fund, which is openly exploring the